Well, welcome back to the Small Business Mindset. As always, I am so excited to get to connect with fellow people in the industry, meaning the business industry, that have unique backgrounds. And I want to introduce you to Andy McDowell. Andy, welcome to the Small Business Mindset. I want to tell you a little bit about him, but I want him to share how he got to where he was, because I think our backstory is very interesting because we have a variety of backstories, whether we have different educational backgrounds or upbringings or spheres of influence or areas of business that we tapped into. And I think it's interesting because all those steps along the way led us to where we are now. And I'm sure throughout those ups and downs and left and right turns, we've discovered things not only about our business, but ourselves as well and how we work and manage. So Andy, I'm going to turn it over to you. Can you please introduce yourselves to our audience? Tell us about yourself.
Sure. First of all, I appreciate the invite to come on your podcast, Kirsten. It's great to be here, and I always love sharing my story. So I like to say there's different sizes, shapes, and flavors to entrepreneurship, right? So I've experienced a number of those different flavors. I start off in two different entrepreneurial companies, 50 or less employees as an employee of those companies, and the second one got bought by this company that most people wouldn't think is entrepreneurial in any shape or form, and that's the Boeing company, largest exporter dollar wise for the United States, a behemoth of a company with employees around the world. But I was tasked with starting a business from scratch, so I became an entrepreneur within a giant corporation. So that was that flavor. And then the 737 MAX crisis came along, and thousands of employees got laid off with that crisis. I was amongst those. I had plans to do 30 years for the company. I made it 22.
Oh, yeah.
And I wanted to start the coaching business I'm in today on a part-time basis after doing 30 years, but with only getting to the 22-year mark, decided to go in it full time. So now I'm a solo entrepreneur. I'm an actual business owner out on my own with that particular flavor of entrepreneurship. So it's been in my blood, and I enjoy every minute of it, being creative and so forth. But I've had the fortune of experiencing many different flavors of it, you could say.
Wonderful. So, as I'm reading a little bit about your background as well, you're an engineer by trade,
Mhm.
which I think a lot of engineers have to come to the table right out of the bat with being very creative minded people. I think, especially in an airline industry that needs to be, forward thinking and innovative and building a team. So, I know a lot of the people that I connect with, especially ones that listen to this podcast, either they're solopreneurs or they own their own company, or just like you in your career, you worked within a larger organization, but maybe you had to lead a team and maybe
Mhm.
you had to create a company within a company. And I know a lot of people I talk to, it's like, how do I get my arms wrapped around that? How do I bring value to the space I'm working within? And even though maybe my skill set or my background doesn't exactly, if somebody looked at me on paper, it wouldn't necessarily translate. But how do I take that and bring the value that I have and apply it to see results?
Well, first of all, you have to recognize that value. Once again, I'm going to use the phrase, comes in different sizes, shapes, forms, and colors.
Yes.
So you may be siloing, if you will, a little bit what value you think that you can bring to the table, when the reality is you might be able to bring a ton of value in different areas, or build together a team that can do that from that perspective. So first of all, you have to recognize that there are different sizes and shapes to value, and then number two, decide what you want to do with your company and what items within those sizes and flavors of value you're going to offer or generate out in the marketplace of the world. I mean, that's where you have to start. Then the rest is just tactics and logistics to get it done.
Right. Most definitely. Yeah. I think some business owners struggle with trying to capture a certain type of audience base, and they are afraid to niche themselves. They're afraid to specialize. And I actually think niching and specialization is not a bad thing. So what are your thoughts on that?
No, I don't think it's a bad thing either. You want to be as unique as possible. Leverage your strengths and be as unique as much as you can. So never be afraid to be a niche. Now, you might have to expand your market geographically or something of that nature to hit your revenue targets if you do that, because you're going after a very uh, s- specialized or maybe smaller part of the market, depending on exactly what it is that you're offering. So you have to be ready for that. Maybe you have to deliver it through the internet or something that's far more reaching than you initially thought. But you're going to stand a better chance of success in your business the more unique, particularly if you can go patent something and be that unique uh, from that perspective in the business world.
Right. Other than other than being unique in our product or service offerings as individuals working within the industry, and I'm going to go back to value again because I think that's what really caught my eye about your area of work and your area of influence is I think people question their value a lot and question when and I'm going to just tell a story about myself. What I've realized is that clients want to work with me really because of the value I bring to them. And my
Hmm.
value might be different and my skill set's different.
Hmm.
Um, can you talk us through what does value look like? When someone brings value, what could that look like? I mean, I can talk to you about what bring value I bring, but sometimes it's not always tactics. It's not always I'm going to bring you data. I mean, what could value look like in other forms?
Well, let's take a step back for a second about the word value. That generally means that there is a need, a desire, a want out in the world that then values what you're bringing to the table because it satisfies or goes beyond more than satisfaction of whatever that want or need is. Um, so then you have to look at the different ways that you could deliver value. So since I come from the aviation world, let me use an analogy, right? Let's look at
Yeah,
the airline business. Is a commodity business. It's geared towards moving people, luggage, etc., from point A to point B. Period.
yeah,
Right. So there's some physical slash functional value in what they bring. I pay $250 for a round trip ticket to go from Dallas to New York City and back for
right.
my vacation. So there's the functional value. But what really the airlines compete on is more the emotional or service value. So, what is my experience like to go to your website and buy a ticket? What is my experience like when I walk through the door of the airport? What is my experience like checking in and getting my luggage on board the airplane? What is my experience on the airplane? What is my experience like getting my luggage back? You can see where I'm
Ah,
going with this. That
yes.
so there's opportunities along that 2, 3, 4, 5 hour time frame that your customer is with you to offer value. It's that smile on the other side of the check-in counter. It's the way that you get treated. It's all those um, type things. And then there's the value of what you're doing when you get to your destination. The very fact that you got that person to New York City and enable them to enjoy all the value they got from the Broadway shows and everything else. That's sort of it's it's enabling them to have some value as opposed to the value you're giving them straight away from the experience when they actually travel with you. But still, they're going to remember those type things. So that's where the whole value chain analysis is called in the business world, for you to have that opportunity and sit down and think about all those different shapes and forms of value that you could potentially offer to a customer throughout their whole experience with you, not just what is the obvious value, that the stapler brings to to their business work. Stapling papers is the direct value, but what could there other values? Take a Steve Jobs and Apple. It's a computer. It's a functional computer, but at the same time, he went into the emotional side, the way it looks and feels and building the brand and everything else. And the more value you can offer to a customer, more likely you're going to keep them as a customer and therefore have a
Mhm.
long-term revenue stream from that particular person or business.
And I love, Andy, that you have experience, vast experience in the airline industry, because I think that's an industry most of us can identify with. Even
Hmm.
if maybe we're not frequent flyers, but maybe we've traveled occasionally, or you see
Or
advertisements of
had friends and family come visit you that took an
absolutely, yeah.
airplane.
But thinking about the airline industry, because that's something we can relate to here. And,
Hmm.
granted, Boeing was the creator of the airplane that services all the brands. What have you seen from the Southwest to the American to the United to, I mean, all the other brands of airliners that travel across the world? Who does it well? How do they take the product that you've created for them
Mm.
and put it into action to create not only a profitable company, but have customers that are happy with their brand and the image and the value and have done it well and have taken really I mean, the concept of airlines hasn't changed that much, but all the complexities of it has changed over the years. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, typically the airlines that get rated the highest come either out of the Middle East or Southeast Asia, like a Singapore Airlines, and they get rated high because of that service level that I was talking about. So I had an interesting experience. I had a 3 week around the world trip in the middle of my career, and I had to fly from Abu Dhabi in the UAE to Jakarta, Indonesia, and for the first time took Etihad Airlines, which is one of the two main carriers that comes out of the UAE, and I was flying business class.
Okay.
And generally, airlines start feeding you shortly after takeoff. After like the first 20 minutes, and the aircraft gets up to its altitude. And I had the first seat on the side of business class. So the flight attendant came over to me, and typically when you're business class and fly, after you sit down before they even pull from the gate, you get a menu,
Oh, wow. Okay.
and you have like 3 or 4 entrees to pick from, and they have a certain number amount of that food on the airplane. So they're keeping track of inventory as they're going along. Generally, it's the purser that comes through and, would you like the beef tonight, sir, or the chicken or the fish or whatever? And so I didn't get one of those when I came on board. So I fully expected, okay, maybe when we get up in the air, they'll start handing them out. And the flight attendant walked over to me and said, "What would you like to have as a meal tonight?" And I'm sitting there rolling my eyes around going, well,
What do you got?
what are my choices? What have you got? And she said, well, we don't have a menu. What would you like? Would you like a sandwich? Would you like a steak? Would you like it's almost like being at
Like,
a restaurant that offers you 20 different choices, or make something custom. So yeah, we can make something
yeah.
back in the kitchen for you, whatever kind of mentality. And it's the only airline, I'm a million miler with Delta. I've traveled around the world 100 times, but only time and only airline I've flown where I basically had to pick my I mean, I ordered a sandwich just because I don't get sandwiches a whole lot on international flights. It's usually a big entree like a steak and
Right.
chicken or whatever,
Yeah.
but why not? I'll try a sandwich. Show me what you got, kind of mentality. And when you can once again be unique in the marketplace and do something different than what the rest of your competition is, that delights your customer like that, particularly a hardened customer, somebody who's traveled around the world, and one airline's just like the other, kind of mentality. It's like, wow. I keep telling that story year after year after year
That's so
because
fascinating. You,
it sits in my mind because they were so different about it. I mean,
you
that's
wouldn't
how.
even think that. I would have never
No.
guessed, and I've never flown that airline or that class level, but
Mhm.
it wouldn't even occur to me that that was even an option. You probably thought I've got 5 options for my food and it's just
Yeah. Because you only have so much space on the airplane with which to
right.
store food. My best friend is a flight attendant for American, and stories he tells me about people, come on board the airplane and think it's a full service kitchen. It's like, I only
No.
have so many bottles of, little bottles of red wine. Or if he's traveling to Vegas, it's like everybody wants champagne or whatever. I only got so much space to
Right.
store
Right.
these, and everybody wants it. It's like I can give one to everybody, but then we're out, and don't ask me for any more because
Yeah.
I only have so much metal and space up in the air with which to store these items. So,
Right. So thank you for sharing that story. That's really fun. So domestic
mhm.
airline carriers that aren't as luxurious as some of our international
Mhm.
counterparts are, hope to fly that someday. I know my son, who is 14 and loves to watch YouTube, of course, watches everyone fly around the world. And I'm sure you've been on many of these airlines and get to, experience view of the world of YouTube, all these cool factors like a shower on the plane and your own
Mhm.
suite and all this kind of stuff. But as we think about, like, and I hate to like bring it down to everyday life, but as maybe as the competitive advantage, as we think about the specific businesses that we work in. I mean, even for you, Andy, you're a life coach and executive coach, and you think
Mhm.
about competition within your industry. How do you set yourself apart, and what are things you should be focused on to do that?
Well, when you're a solo entrepreneur like myself or in the coaching business, it's about branding yourself, and word of mouth can be everything.
Yeah.
In the consulting practice I built within Boeing, um, it's a small circle, and word of mouth was everything. Governments attending conferences and they're sitting next to their counterparts in the country right next door to them or whatever, and said, "Hey, we got to build a GPS approach into X airport. Um, how did you guys do it, or who did you use?" And you hope that their answer is your company. So it's about the branding, and the branding is a little bit about your values and what's important to you as a business and what you have to offer as a product or service. But a lot of it is about the trust and experience level that your customers have with you,
Gotcha.
and that word of mouth. So regardless, if you're making a product or service, and in particular, if you're a single person business like I am myself, branding is everything. So what are you doing to reinforce or build that brand in your business? How are you treating your customers? How are you communicating with them? How do you make them feel?
Yeah.
Do they trust you? First of all, are you delivering a quality product or service? And if you check that box, how did they feel along the way?
Hmm. Most
Going back to the airlines, it's the same way. They got you to New York City, but how did they feel along the way
definitely.
of that process? So it's all about the brand and what do you stand for. And I think that's becoming even more and more important, particularly with the younger generations want to understand. And the reason why I think you see business starting to get into politics a little bit, because the younger generations want to do business with people that think the same
Right.
as they do in the world. So,
I'm glad you brought that up, because what have you seen throughout your career as far as how the customer experience has changed and what they're looking for a relationship with a company or a business? You mentioned politics and values. I mean,
mhm.
from a maybe a mission statement driven, but what else are they looking for? How has that changed?
Ease of use.
Mhm.
Our lives get busier and busier and busier. We're trying to cram more things in our lives to find joy and happiness outside of ourselves. I wish more of us would look inside ourselves for that, but that's another podcast episode.
Right.
But it's in with the technologies that are around, particularly that rectangular thing that you carry around in your hand all the time. It's all about ease of use. How can I get this quickly done and moved on to the next thing without without a reduction of quality of service
Right.
or product, right? So that standard is still there, but now I want it faster, better, and cheaper.
Mhm. What tools have you seen your clients or colleagues in the industry use to make that easier? I mean, have you seen, and because I remember when I first started in business, and I'm going to date myself, probably similar to you, Andy, is that
Mhm.
email was brand new when I first started out of college. And I thought, whoa, I have an email account. How exciting. And just getting clients used to that. and having a landline phone at the office with a voicemail that and the only way I could check that phone was actually to be at my desk to check the phone.
Yep.
And then as time went on, technology evolved and I could actually call into the office and check the voicemail. But this is really before people started using cell phones. Are you seeing trends as far as like how communication styles have changed, or expectations of response time has changed, and what vehicles tend to be a little more popular, or should we be
Yeah, it's well, it's not only speed, but it's also learning and slash anticipating kind of technologies, right? So you get into artificial intelligence, um, the Zoom call that we're sitting on right now, just using technologies to get your customer closer to you, as well as anticipating what their need might be. And then maybe even on down the road, we get into virtual reality where you could have an experience like the grocery store. Yeah, I want my groceries picked and delivered to me without getting off my couch. So now I'm going to use virtual reality and almost pretend like I'm at the grocery store and literally pulling things off the shelf. Obviously
yeah.
it's being done with graphics and everything, but you're pulling off the shelf and stick it in your cart, but it's monitoring what you're pulling off
Uh-huh.
and then gives some worker in a warehouse the pick list, and they're quickly doing it and then throw it in a van and deliver it to your home. So you still have that experience of like being at a grocery store and instead of trying to meander your way through different pages on a website, which can be a little bit cumbersome and even feel a little manual these days with how long websites have been around. But you can see the maybe the experiential or emotional value you get out of pretending like you're at the grocery
Doing
store
the
instead of
shopping.
this 2D website screen kind of look. Um, Particularly if you can duplicate like um, can of tomato sauce, and you can pull it out and actually turn around like you would in the store and read the label about ingredients and calories and whatever, and mimic that same experience as opposed to having to hunt and peck your way through six different pictures to get the same information. It's just like
Right.
one motion, like you're doing it at the
At
grocery
the
store.
grocery store.
Then you might, for a period of time, and that period of time might be 6 months, a year, or 5 years, or 10 years, have a leverage or uniqueness that your competition doesn't have yet until they catch up with you on the technology. So
That's
as a business, do you
fascinating.
want to
Huh?
live on that? Do you want to live on that tip of the spear all the time? And that's how you're going to compete in the world, or do you want everybody else to figure it out and we'll just duplicate later and base our business model on low cost because it's already been developed. We didn't have to sink all those innovation dollars to do it, and we'll compete at some other aspect of business. Those are all things you got to decide strategically about your business.
It's really fascinating. Yeah, I hadn't actually thought of that, because yeah, you have the true experience of doing what you should. And I was even thinking, yeah, sometimes you're at the store and you're walking around and like this, like, the end caps with the sales stuff or the new product hits your eye, that I
Well,
probably wouldn't have bought that online, but I
I
would have.
have I have a friend who works for the Major League Baseball team here in Atlanta where I live, and they're working on technology now while you're sitting at home with virtual reality that you could pretend like you're actually walking around the baseball field while the game is actually going on. So they're actually incorporating the actual game going on, putting that in a virtual reality, and then enable you somehow to like be standing there at third base or sitting in a
Going like,
chair in foul territory and watching the game.
that's so interesting. I remember when the NFL, and I can't remember what network started doing it, where you could actually see, from your TV at home, okay, here's the first down and where the line was, and then how far they had to go. I mean, I thought, who would have thought of that? I mean, how cool is that? So you
Mhm.
don't have to pay attention to the guy standing on the side with the poles, but it's like that was probably a very elementary first step in creating that viewer experience when you're not physically there. That's really interesting to think about that. Yeah. How are your customers experiencing your business if they're not even there with you? That's a deep question.
Yeah, you said
Yeah,
the part of the value that you're bringing is they don't. I mean, considering where gas prices are today, I don't have to get in my car and go spend $3, $4 or a gallon of gas getting to the grocery store and back. Now I
right.
may have to pay a little bit for that for the business hopping in a van and bringing it to me and getting their van back to the store, but um,
Yeah.
that's all perception. You're sort of hiding that behind the curtain as opposed to it being readily apparent time wise. You know,
Mhm.
time is a finite entity in this world, and the more you can save people time without a reduction of quality of service and those type things, the more you're going to be able to compete in the future.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
how to use technologies, processes, everything of that nature to do that
Right.
is is
Time
where the
value of
tip of
money
the
is
spear
always,
is going to
yeah,
be in innovation.
that's very true. So without, if you're not a business that maybe is an innovator, maybe you're a service-based business and that's all you do.
Mhm.
You don't have a product to sell. Um, this is a question I've been had for myself over the years. What is your recommendation? You know, you have a client base and you have a customer
Mhm.
base, and you want to constantly keep in touch with them. And maybe they're not buyers right now for your service or have a need for your service. What is your lens say about how do you engage with these individuals outside of work? Is it, do you think it's a, do you need to be connecting with them on a, you know, regular basis to have a social event, or a, you go to a sporting event together, or you treat them to something? I mean, how far do you recommend taking that engagement? And I mean, I get some people I know in my world, probably some people you know in your world, do it really well, and you're like, oh, it's their annual blah blah blah, or you know, they're the ones that treat me to that. What is that? Is that valuable, and do you see that as an asset to your business growth?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know how to answer the question about how far that you go.
Yeah,
It
I don't
really
think
depends
anyone
on your
can.
business and your profit margins. But for example, um, and I'll bring this up because of the line of business that you're in. But I have a client who has a marketing business for real estate agents
Okay.
that offers a monthly postcard like mailer that has useful information on it for that time of the year, like in the summertime. um she'll send out a postcard of summer festival events with details and times and what things that a person would put on their refrigerator that they're going to see all the time, and to actually use the information on it. And yes, the real estate agents picture and everything is in the corner. That's not the main. Buying real estate happens what, every two,
Every day,
three,
probably, yeah.
5, 10. Well, it happens every
Well,
day,
okay,
but for
true,
an
but for
individual
individuals, yeah,
customer,
yeah,
it may happen only once every 10 years. So I only need that real estate agent once every 10 years. But if I am constantly once a month sending out this postcard that has information on it that's useful in their daily lives, and you're delivering value, it's a small amount of value per se, but it's still value that they use all the time, and you're in front of them all the time because of that. When it comes time in that 10-year period that they need a real estate agent, you're more likely to be at the top of the list of their call to say, hey, I'm ready to sell my place and look for a new one. I need a real estate agent.
right,
So don't think it has to be a tremendous amount of value per se. It may be something as simple as that, but just to always be in front of them and never out of mind, with a little bit of value, can go a long way to be that first phone call when they need you, when that major life event or whatever happens, or a friend or family member does.
mhm, that's definitely. Andy, this has been a great conversation, and I appreciate your insight and your background and sharing your skills and expertise with our audience base. It's been very interesting to me, and I loved hearing from you and learning about your stories. How can we best connect with you?
Best place is my website at www.generateyourvalue.com. I'm also a co-host on a podcast myself called Generate Your Values, available on all the major platforms. We're about to start season 3 in the middle of September. Come check us out, and hopefully get some golden nuggets about life or business or leadership while you visit with Zach, my co-host, and myself.
That sounds fantastic. I'll make sure to include all that in the show notes as well. But Andy, thank you for your time today. It's been a joy to meet you and have you as a guest.
And once again, thanks for the invite and thanks for generating your value in this world.
Thank you.